Welcome to the unexpected episode of College Football Time with Avery and Miguel. I am Miguel. This is my partner Avery. Avery, um, we had ourselves a fascinating New Year's Eve day, and it happens to be on a Saturday. Thank the good Lord. But TCU, Michigan, TCU, the number 3 seed, took on number 2 seed Michigan, Big Ten versus Big 12. I'm just surprised that TCU scored 51 points in this game. And we both know that TCU have this bad habit of starting the game very slow. They trail and then they make a rally, but they knew that against this Michigan team, they can't do that. And they quickly jumped on top in the first quarter with 14 points. Two of their touchdowns came on interceptions, which I'm gonna explain a little bit detail about that. But TCU is going to the dance. They're going to the national championship game, which will be on January 9th. We'll be looking forward to that. But yeah, it was just a great performance all around by TCU from the very beginning all the way to the end of the game. But they were fortunate that there was another quarter because the more Michigan kept coming back, TCU kept pulling away a little bit, but they were able to hang on since Michigan made that second half rally to try to make the game interesting. But TCU is going to the dance. This is going to be their second time in school history that they're going to the national championship game, and they're the first Texas team since Texas that is going to the national championship game, which was 2009. So take it from here, Avery. What do you think?
I was greatly impressed by the game. Um, I wasn't surprised that TCU won, even though we're doing a post-game analysis. When I was doing, a pre-game analysis, TCU had all the pieces that they could win this game. Because even at the start of the game, the quick start, with the pick six, putting points on the board, that was how they were going to beat Michigan. They had to start off strong from the get-go and then just keep the foot on the accelerator. And it worked. At no time, once TCU scored, did they ever lose the lead. But Michigan has this habit in the second half of putting points on the board. Like you, yes, I was astonished that TCU put up 51 points versus Michigan, because Michigan only allows about 13 points per game coming into this game. So with the amount of offense that Max Duggan, helped his team, and another point is he was not the starter at the beginning of the season, yet he still stays in, the analysts were talking about the game in this era of transfer portals. Max Duggan could have gone someplace else, but he decided to stay. He's not the starting quarterback when the season starts, but yet when his number calls, he puts up those numbers, he helps his team win, and they proved it this entire season. They did have some games that were shaky early in the season. Of course, that loss to Kansas State could have been, a heartbreaker, but the fact that they kept it together, the fact that they made it in the playoff, and now this amazing game they had versus Michigan, just like you said, they were the first school in Texas history to make the college playoff. Also, they're the small private school that made it to the playoff. And if there was one school in Texas I was gonna say that could probably make it to the playoff, it was either going to be TCU or Baylor. They've had these great programs over the past 5 years that are knocking on the door of the playoff. So Max Duggan, even being the Heisman runner-up, he showed that he can lead this team. And it was just an amazing game, literally from start to finish. I would say this this game is probably going to be the game of the year. Of course, we do have 3 more games tomorrow, and of course, the championship game. But Max Duggan showed he can do it. Max Duggan showed when it needs to be him, team, let's go. We got it.
Max Duggan is the heart and soul of this TCU team. His willingness to win by any means necessary is something that you have to respect. There were 3 plays that solidified TCU to win this game. The first one, 2 of the 3 plays come from late in the third quarter. The second pick six was huge for TCU because they went to score a touchdown. I felt that hurt Michigan because they just kept coming back, but TCU, that second pick six hurt them. TCU's running back, Amari DeMarcado, who had a fantastic game. That 69-yard run was huge in late in the third quarter. And then, last but not least, in the fourth quarter, Quinn Johnson's 76-yard reception touchdown. That was like the cherry on top for Michigan. So those 3 plays were the ones that really stood out to me in TCU having the edge over Michigan.
I agree with you. Those key plays were kind of the dagger that could have, taken out Michigan and eventually did take out Michigan. Another thing that surprised me during the game were what a lot of content creators call ref ball. Occasionally, the referees were not consistent with their calls. For example, for Michigan, right in the first quarter, they had an interception, but they marked the ball like 2 yards deeper than where it was. And that possible touchdown in the first quarter that could have been called, but they ended up calling him on the 1. Games should be played by the players. I remember doing an interview with a friend who played college football and played pro football, and one thing he mentioned is let the players play. Of course, you don't want it to get out of control, but let the players play. And these are tiny things that can have a huge impact. And what you don't want to do is let the game, be a referee game instead of a college football game. And sometimes when things like that happen, they can turn the tide for another team. And in the first half, that did seem to be a problem for Michigan. But like in any other game this season, Michigan turned it on in the second half, but it just was not enough. But Michigan knows that they can get to the dance, and I see Coach Harbaugh still looking at his players and saying, hey, this was a tough loss. This is how we're going to do it again. This is how we're going to still be a part of this playoff picture. Now, when it expands, that could be a totally different story. But so far, Michigan needs to be proud of themselves, but TCU just had more. And like I said, so far, this is already a top 3 game for bowl games.
Jim Harbaugh now is 1-6 in bowl games. He has all 6 straight now. But they will be back. They definitely will be back. So it's Michigan. So hopefully he finally, because before you succeed, you have to fail. So some don't have to fail as much, but in Jim's case, he's gonna be back and compete. But let's go to Ohio State, Georgia. What a magnificent game. Magnificent. But this is first of all, Ohio State were fortunate to be in the playoffs. We know that. Georgia, on the other hand, they've been the best team in the country for the last 18 months. It's not the same team as last year, but this team has a lot of heart. You never want to underestimate the heart of a champion. And in this game, in the Peach Bowl, they proved it. So But one thing I will say is that both quarterbacks stepped up, especially in the fourth quarter. CJ Stroud, not only with his arms, but with his legs too. So, but it's just very heartbreaking for Ohio State because they squandered not one, but two 14-point lead. The defense absolutely abysmal for allowing that. So while many people will look at the kicker for missing that field goal, which he wasn't even close, it was their defense. Their defense should have done a better job. But much credit to Georgia. They proved that they're champions for a reason. And now we will have TCU and Georgia in the national title game. But it was a phenomenal game between Ohio State and Georgia.
Miguel, you're right. Ohio State did what they needed to do. They had to start off strong like TCU. Georgia being a favorite, they are the defending national champions. Ohio State had to start from the get-go. They scored first, and like you said, they were up. They had a 14-point lead over Georgia, and the interesting thing is they're playing in the Peach Bowl, and granted, I mean, sure, it's a neutral site, but that was home territory for Georgia. But Ohio State had all these weapons, and you're right. A lot of people are going to look to the kicker. And like I've said, since we've started, the show, teams hug your kickers, your punters, let them know they are essential to the team. But you are correct. It was Ohio State's defense. CJ Stroud and Stetson Bennett did what they needed to do as far as leading their team to score. But like in any football game, sure, offense is going to win, but it's going to be the defense that wins these championships. And Ohio State's defense did not do what they were supposed to do. They had a lead, and the defense should have stepped up, made plays to keep Georgia from marching down the field and scoring more. And Ohio State only allows about 20 points a game. So they had Georgia on the ropes multiple times in which they could have stopped them and just sealed away this game. But the initial thing you said at the beginning, Ohio State is very lucky to be in that playoff. Personally, even with USC losing, I think they had a better shot being in than Ohio State. Now, if USC wins, definitely they're in. Ohio State should not have gotten that chance. But Ohio State took the opportunity to say, okay, we're lucky to be here. Let's show why we deserve to be here and possibly win a national championship. Because one thing that you mentioned, and I definitely agree with, is when you have bowl games, when you have these playoff games, when it's a blowout, it doesn't look like the team should have been there in the first place. But yet, Ohio State, they came to play. They came to play. And just like we've seen even over the past couple of days, no lead is safe. We know this in college football, and recently we know this in the NFL. No lead is safe. Just look at the Liberty Bowl. Just look at Kansas and Arkansas. Even though Kansas lost that game, Kansas needs to be proud of themselves because they fought. Same thing with Georgia. Even only down 14 points twice, they came back and fought and fought and fought. But the blame, you're correct. The blame is not on the kicker. It's not on the kicker. It's on Ohio. It's on Ohio State's defense because they had multiple opportunities to seal it and they just couldn't do it. But again, like the TCU Michigan game, Ohio State Georgia game, greatly was not what I expected. I initially thought Georgia was going to run over Ohio State. All Georgia has done all season is run over teams. I think the one team that gave them a problem is Missouri, but even Missouri had them on the ropes. Same thing, defense. A lot of us have watched football for a number of years. We know it's going to be the defense that's going to seal games. The offense is going to put up the points, but defense has to do their job too. I am proud of Ohio State, but they need to look at making some changes and looking at what needs to be fixed. But congratulations to Georgia. Congratulations to Georgia. They earned it.